Good morning, guys. Hope you are really well. I have some good news. We've just won the week's Doodle Maths. Doodle Stars. We've got the most in the whole entire school, star class. So well done, you guys. It's really great to see that you're accessing your Doodle Maths as well as all of your home learning as well. So really, really well done. I've had some wonderful work in from all of you. I've had brochures about houses. I've had writing. I've had some wonderful maths videos. I've had some amazing scavenger hunts from Woodland over the weekend. It's been so great. So well done, you. Keep up your hard work.
Good morning, friends. Good morning, friends. I hope that you are well today. We have a busy day before us with lots of work and lots of play.
Our project for this term is around the UK, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at where we are in the world, really, what we are a part of, and how we are positioned in the world. So some of the key vocabulary we're going to be looking at is a village. A village is a place where people live. There must be a church in a village, and there may be a school. Our village is called Goodnesston. A town is a place where people live and work. There may be shops, places of worship, which is like a church, leisure facilities, so that might be like gyms or parks, and schools there. It is bigger than a village, but it's smaller than a city. A city. This is the biggest settlement where people live and work. There will always be a cathedral, and there may be tall buildings. They tend to be busy places with lots of traffic. London is a city. Actually, it's a capital city of England, which means the government sits there. A county is an area which may include a group of towns or a city. England is split up into 83 counties, and we live in the county of Kent. A country is the land with its own government, borders and rules. We live in the country of England. And then you've got the United Kingdom, and this is 4 countries which make up the United Kingdom, and that is England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Our country, and the bit that we sit in the United Kingdom, is called England. And then you have a continent. So each time we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. A continent is a group of countries. The world is made up of 7 continents. You've got Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica and Australasia. England is in the continent of Europe. Now, one thing if you look at the bottom of your knowledge organiser here, you've got the continents and the oceans, then you've got the United Kingdom, then you've got England, and I've made a little sign that says London and Kent, just so you can see whereabouts in England we are. And then if you look on the right hand side, you can see where that arrow falls, where Goodnesston is, and next to it is Canterbury and Sandwich and Deal, and they're all of the towns and cities that are near to us. So also what we're going to be doing is we are going to be looking at some landmarks in London. So we're going to be looking at the City of London, because that's our nearest huge city, and it's the capital city of England. So it's really good that we have a really good understanding of London. So London is the capital city of England. It has 8.9 million people live there, as well as the Queen at Buckingham Palace. There are many famous landmarks. Now, landmarks are something that a place is recognised for, really, and that are quite special to a place. So I wonder if you could look in that picture and see if you can see anything that you can recognise. Straight away, I can see the London Eye. That's that big, sort of big Ferris wheel in the middle there. And that Big Ben is that huge clock tower there. So also we're going to be looking at our little village of Goodnesston. Now, you should be quite familiar with Goodnesston. You all come to school here. I know only some of you live here, but lots of you know it quite well, and you spend quite a lot of time here. So Goodnesston is a small village. Only 378 people live here. It is surrounded by lots of farmland and woodland. We know all about the woodland, don't we? It has a church, a pub, a tea room and gardens, and of course a school. So Goodnestone is very, very different to London, isn't it? And we're going to be looking at lots of different things that make it different to Goodnestone and London and how different they are.
So today in our reading, we are going to be looking at this story. It's another story that's based in our capital city of London, and it's called The Queen's Hat. Now on the front cover, I wonder if you can see all of those wonderful men in their red uniforms with their little hats on, and I wonder if you can remember seeing those in Katie in London, or do you recognise those from the video from William Whiskerson as well? They are the Queen's Guards, aren't they? So who is the author? Can you remember what that word author means? It means the person that wrote the story, doesn't it? And this author is called Steve Anthony. And the story, the summary, the blurb on the back says, a sudden gust of wind sets off a marvellous adventure for the Queen. Lots of Queen's men and one very special hat. Just where will that hat land? A witty and stylish celebration of London, the Queen, and the new royal baby. Oh, there's a lovely picture at the back as well, with all of those, the Queen's Guards, all of them, look, climbing up that tall landmark. I wonder if any of you can recognise what that landmark is. What's in the middle here is a clock. What's a famous landmark that's got a clock on it in London? Big Ben. So let's have a read. The Queen's Hat. I'm going to sit like this, so hopefully you can see all the pictures as I read. The Queen was on her way to visit someone very special when the wind went swish. The wind took the Queen's favourite hat right off her head. Oh gosh. And look, there's the Queen's little doggy as well. He's got a very fancy jumper on, hasn't he? And that is a very nice hat that's all of a sudden gone off the Queen's head. It soared high above the Queen. It swooshed high above the Queen's men. The wind was so strong that it swept the Queen's hat all the way to Trafalgar Square. Wow, look what the Queen's hat has just flown over. Who recognises this from Trafalgar Square? Who can tell their adult? Who is that? We've just read a whole story about this lovely lion, haven't we? This is the lion, isn't it? From Katie in London. I wonder if his tummy is chilly today. Sitting on that cold stone, do you remember? He had a really chilly tummy. So it's gone all the way Trafalgar Square and all through London Zoo. London Zoo. Well, London Zoo is a very famous zoo in London. It's got lots and lots of lovely animals. We're very lucky in Kent as well. We have some fantastic zoos. We have, I wonder if you could tell your parents any of the zoos that are local to us. Think about any animals that you might see in the zoo, because what's the Queen on top of here? What animal is this? And all along the London Underground. The London Underground is a network of trains and trains that go underneath the city, and they stop at all different places. If you've ever been to London, you may have gone on the London Underground. It's another really famous way of transporting yourself around London, a bit like the big red buses, but it's underground. And all around the London Eye, and all across Tower Bridge. Well, Katie and the lion definitely went across Tower Bridge, didn't they? And William Whiskerson. These are all our famous landmarks. And all over Big again. Look at that. Look at all of those cards. Where it sailed up further into the sky. Swoosh! Until at last the Queen and all the Queen's men floated gently down. Look, they've all got umbrellas. They're all floating down. That reminds me a little bit of another famous story that's based in London. Mary Poppins, she comes on an umbrella, doesn't she? That's one of my favourite stories. To Kensington Palace, along with the Queen's hat. What's here? What's in this pram? What do we get in prams? A lovely baby. There we go. There's the Queen pushing the new royal baby. And the butler's saying, would anybody like a cup of tea? He ate. Right, today in reading, we are going to add some actions to our story, The Queen's Hat, which is what we're going to be looking at this week. And what I would like you to do is I would like you to keep practicing these actions, keep retelling the story. This is really about us getting to know this story really, really well. So I've created some symbols on my board here, if you can see them. So this is the retelling of the whole story of the Queen's Hat. And what I've done is I've created a story map of the whole journey using little symbols just to remind us what comes next. So the arrows is just showing you the direction of the story. So the arrows go all the way through the story. And the symbols are what's happening. So I'm going to talk you through some of the symbols and then I'm going to act out the story for you and show you the actions. And I really want you to join in with doing that. I want you to stand up. I want you to show all of your actions and see by the end of it if you can start to retell the story as well. You might need to watch this a good few times. In school, when we do this, we watch it 2 or 3 times a day to really get to know the story. And then by the end of the week, you know that story off by heart and you know all of the actions, and then we will start mapping it, and then eventually we start retelling, and some of you will start writing stories and then writing different versions of this story. So this is something that's really important that we do in school. So first of all, let me go through some of the symbols with you that I've created, and these are just really rough drawings. As you can see how Mrs. Donahoe's here. You might want to do something like this with mummy or daddy at home. You will need help doing this because this can be quite tricky when you first start story mapping out. But I'm going to talk you through it for a minute. So this is my Queen's crown. This here, this swirly, is when I'm talking about the wind, and we're going to do this action for wind. This is the hat. Let me just, This is, I'm going to do this action for hat. So the Queen's hat, we're going to take it off, okay? So Queen is like it's got her crown here, and then hat is going to be like this. The wind is going to be this, that swooshy wind. That's it going high, the wind, so high, soaring high. The soldier, we're going to do this action, like a soldier, like a really stern, serious soldier. This is Trafalgar Square, so I'm going to do a T and a square, and then I've drawn a little funny little picture of the lion. He's not very good, is he? You can do much better than that. And then I've got my hat. Sorry, that's my Queen. My hat that's going flying high over the wind. And then I've got my London Zoo, and I thought we could just put some ears on us for London Zoo. So with some kind of animal, you might be a tiger or something. You could just put ears on you here for a London Zoo. And then we've got our hat again. The Underground, that's the London Underground. I thought you could just be a train. Zoom. So that's going to be us on the train. Zoom. The big wheel, that we could just make a big circle, like going around like this, because that's how the London Eye goes, isn't it? The Tower Bridge, we're going to do this, and then we're going to go up, down, like the Tower Bridge does. It goes up and down, doesn't it? Big Ben, we're going to pretend to be a clock. This is the umbrella when they float back down. So, Buckingham Palace, because it's got a really tall building. And then at the end, we've got a baby. So these are our symbols that we're going to practice, and then we're going to use these to retell the story. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to retell you the Queen's Hat again. I know you've just watched me read the story and we've just gone through the symbols. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to story tell. This is what we call it in school. We story tell. So we don't read the book. We don't have the book in front of us. I use our lovely journey here, and we're going to use our actions, and we're going to retell the story, and then you guys are going to practice this at home. So I'm going to do it first of all, okay? So the Queen was on her way to visit someone special when the wind went woo and took off her hat. It soared high above their heads and high above the soldiers' heads, and it went all around to Trafalgar Square. The hat went all around to London Zoo. The hat went all around to the Underground. Zoom, zoom. The hat went all around to the London Eye. The hat went all around to Tower Bridge. The hat went all around to Big Ben. The hat went all around, and it went high, high, and the Queen and her soldiers, they floated down with the hat all the way to Buckingham Palace. And the hat landed on the baby. So far in SPAG, we've been looking at full stops and capital letters, and when we need to use a capital letter, we had capital letters at the beginning of our sentence, at the full stop at the end of our sentence, and we also had capital letters for the word I. So I always has a capital letter. So we've figured out that capital letters go at the beginning, full stops go at the end. What I want us to have a little look at today is recognising what is a sentence, so that when you are writing, when you come to doing, some of you are already writing quite lengthy pieces, some of you are just at the beginning of your journey of writing. But when you come to write, you need to be able to recognise what actually is a sentence, so that you know when to put your full stop in and when to start a new sentence with a new capital letter. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at what actually is a sentence. So on this slide, I would like you to have a look at the words. The words say home, ran, dog, the. I would like you to have a think about those words and think about how you can make those words, how you could rearrange them all and make that into a sentence so that it makes sense. So the sentence, once you've rearranged it, should read, the dog ran home. Now, don't forget, if you're writing that out, which your Key Stage 1 children, I'd really like you to have a go at writing that out. You need to put what at the beginning and what at the end. In this slide, you've actually got two separate sentences. And how we recognise two separate sentences, we will look at nouns and verbs and what makes up a sentence a bit later on as the week goes on. But when you're reading, make you realise what a sentence is there's normally a natural break. So when I read this, I want you to think about, can you hear the natural break? Where am I naturally pausing and then moving on to the next sentence? Everyone came to the party. They liked it. In these slides, I'd like you to think about where the full stop should go. So you're recognising that there's two separate sentences. I want you to point to the word where the full stop goes after it, so the end of the sentence. So the sentences go, this is our new car, my mum drives it. Where's the sentence? Where can you divide that piece of speech into two different sentences? In this slide, I'd like you to show me or show your adult where the capital letters should go. So I'm going to read you the two sentences and I want you to think, there should be a full stop there, so there definitely should be a capital letter there. Remember, capital letters go at the beginning of every sentence. You are my brother, she is my sister. Which sentence has been correctly punctuated? So which one has the full stops and the capital letters in the best place, in the correct place? In the sentence below, there's some mistakes, so I'd like you to have a think about it. I'm going to read it to you, and then you might need your adult to read over it with you and to point to the words for you so that you can see where maybe something's not quite right. So the sentence reads, all the food was gone, my friends were very hungry. Now, are the full stops and the capital letters in the correct place? If they're not, I wonder if you could correct it for me. In our project time today, we are going to be thinking about a compass. Now, a compass is just below me. You can see this picture of a compass, and it has an N, S, E, and a W on it. And they stand for the directions north, south, east, and west. And when you are using maps, that's a lot of the language that you would be using, and that's what you would use when reading a map to find out where something is and which direction you might need to go in. And when at some point when we're back at school, we will have another look at some compasses and get to explore those in our surroundings. But for the meantime, I thought it would be really good for you guys to have a look at the maps that we've been looking at and to think about using some of that language. Now, when we look on our continents, which is just to the side of me, you can see that some of that vocabulary is actually in the continents. We've got North America and South America, haven't we? Now, if you look at whereabouts North America and South America are on the map, North America is at the top, isn't it? And South America is below it. And that's because the North America is towards the north and south is southern. And we've got the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere, and that's what our world is split into. It's into those two sections of northern and southern. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to have a go at using some of that vocabulary, north, south, east and west. So you might say Europe is to the north. Africa is to the south, is in the southern hemisphere. And I want you to have a little go at doing that with the continents to begin with. So this is our lovely globe that we have in the classroom, and I've managed to get it to work so that it glows really nicely. Now, this is what, if we were all the way up and we were that man in the moon, or we were on another one of our amazing planets of our solar system, we would be able to look down. This is what our world would look like. So like I said yesterday, it's a spherical shape, it's a sphere, it's round, and wouldn't be perfectly round because you might have mountains or volcanoes, so it would be a textured surface, but it would look a little bit like this. And this is our wonderful world. And in it, you can see the different continents. So this huge continent here is Africa, and Africa is made up of lots of smaller countries. Can you see they're all different colours? We've got Algeria, Libya, Egypt, and then up here, if you can see, I might need to just tilt my globe a little bit on its axis, and you can see you've got Europe. So Europe is this space here, and this little pink country here. Can you see the shape of that? That, and this green bit here, this pink bit here, this is Northern Ireland at the top there, that's Ireland. And this here is the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries. We've got England, we've got Wales, we've got Scotland, and we've got Northern Ireland, and that's what makes up our country. So can you see how tiny our country is here compared to, let's find a nice big country. So we've got over here, we've got, where's Australia? Oh, all the way down here. Can you see Australia down here? How much bigger Australia is? So Australia's in down the south, and the United Kingdom, can you see that's up towards the north? Now, what I'd really like you Key Stage 1 children to do is to create some sentences using that compass vocabulary, that north, south, east, west. Can you create 5 different sentences for me, having a think about where things are positioned in the world? Have a look, you might be able to go on Google Maps, have a look around all the world. You might have a globe at home. If you've got a globe at home, that's amazing, because it's really nice to see the world rather than on a flat piece of paper, to be able to see it in a 3D form. That 2D map can sometimes be really confusing and quite abstract for us. So to warm us up in our maths today, I thought this would be a really fun game. Mrs. Woodger told me about it actually, and I thought, oh, that's such a cool idea. I love that, because this is something that we can all definitely do at home. So I'm going to use Mr. Dexter's bin. I've cleaned it out so it's not dirty, don't worry. And I'm going to use, first of all, I've got some sort of feely throwing things from one of our sensory baskets, but you could literally use anything for this. So I'm going to start with an amount. So I know that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to start with 7. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these at my bin. I'm going to stand back a bit, make it a bit tricky for myself, see how many I can get in and see how many I don't get in. That's our first step. Oh, 1 in, 2 in. Right, so I'm going to look in my bin. I managed to get 1, 2, 3, 4 in, and 3 on the floor. Now, this is a little bit like our part whole model, because I had 4 inside the bin and 3 outside the bin, but together I've still got 7. So I thought this is a really nice way of us looking at our number bonds to make certain numbers like 10, 20. You could go much higher Key Stage 1 children, and think about, we have that same amount, but we can split it in different ways. And this is a really good way for us to make different number bonds up. So I thought a really good game is to sort of give yourself a bit of a chart. I'm going to put one on one of the next slides, and you can see all the different ways where you throw your amount and see all the different ways that it splits and see how many different ways you can do it. So I've used my feely, can't think what these are called. They're like little feely balls, aren't they? So I've started with those. Next, I'm going to start with some counters. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 counters I'm going to start with, and I'm going to try again with this. Now, you don't necessarily need a bin. I also thought about doing it with one of my sorting circles. So you could literally draw a circle on a piece of paper and throw things in, see how many land on the outside, see how many land inside it. You could use a washing basket, a toy basket. You have so many things at home that you could do this with, and so many different items as well. You know, I'm using quite boring things like counters, but maybe you could use cars or pasta or whatever you fancy, whatever you've got in your home. So I'm going to try again with Mr. Dexter's bin, see how many I get in. Oh, not very many that time. So I managed to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inside, and 1, 2, 3 on the outside. And we know, don't we, 7 and 3 make 10. For a bit of a challenge to our game for our Key Stage 1 children, I had a bit of a think, and I thought, at school we use counters, and we use rods, and we use lots of different things to represent tens and ones. And I thought, actually, at home you could just use anything really, but we could just put value to something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an example of my little bears here, and I have got 3 big red bears and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 little bears. Now, I'm going to say that my big bears are worth 10. So we could count these in tens, couldn't we? 10, 20, 30. And then I'm going to say my little bears are ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 10, 20, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 35. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the same game again. So I've got my amount, haven't I, my 35, and I've got my tub, and I'm going to throw them in and I'm going to see how they split again. So that time, I ended with one of my 10 bears and 2 of my 1 bears, and outside of the pot, and these guys were inside of the pot. So on one side, I've got 2 10s, so 10 add 10, which is 10, 20, and then I've got 1, 2, 3. So I've got 23 and 10 and 1, 2, 12. So 23 add 12 equals 35 because I still started with that same amount. It's just fallen and split differently. I wonder how many ways we could throw them and see how they fall and split differently, and how many different ways we could make up that total of 35. Today in phonics, we're going to be looking at the sh sound again. And I really want you all to stand up big and tall and see and make this sound for me. Shh. Now, the sh sound is made up, isn't it, of a s and a. And when you put them together like this, they create a digraph, which is the sh. Now, what I'd like you to do today is on the next slide, there's a word map with lots of words that have the sh sound as their initial sound, which means it goes at the beginning. So I'd like you to quickly, before we go on to the next slide, see if you can think of 3 words that begin with the sh sound. So I'm going to think of ship, ship. I'm going to think of shell. And my final one is going to be sheep. Now, what I'd like you to do with the sounds mat on the next slide is I'd like you to read all of those words, and I'd like, especially the Key Stage 1 children, I'd like you to try and create a silly sentence. Now, a silly sentence, a nonsense sentence, can be quite fun and quite silly. It doesn't need to be something that makes sense. So you could say, the sheep swam away to board the ship. Something that you don't think would really happen. I don't think really sheep will run away to go and be pirates and go on ships. But it's a funny way of writing sentences, and it's a really good way of us practicing writing our super sounds. Right, what I'd like you to do, excellent sh work. Now what I'd like you to do is do a bit of a recap. Now, on the slide in front of you is all of the sounds from when we did our phase 2. So this is particularly for those reception children because we've just finished phase 2 and we're moving on to phase 3. And it's really important that we keep recapping those sounds that we've been taught, because you've been taught all of these phase 2 sounds now, but that when something new comes into our brain, like the sh sound, that the other sounds don't fall out. So we need to keep recapping on them and re-looking at them and making sure that we can still remember them, because there's lots and lots to remember, isn't there? So you should have some little cards like this that I put in your home learning pack, and they have got all the sounds on. So I would like you to get these out of your pack for me, and I'd like you to put them all out, spread them all out on the floor, and see if you can still remember all of these sounds and what the words on them as well. So whether you can say, that's an O, and I know that because it's O for orange, and that's an and I know that because it's for umbrella. Okay, so I want you to have a good recap. If there's any sounds that you think you can't remember, I just can't remember what that is, make a pile of the ones that you're like, absolutely awesome, I know those totally, and make a pile of, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to keep those out so I can have another look at them tomorrow.